are you today? Okay. Sorry, I'm a little distracted because I didn't set this up right. Anyway, so today I'm going to try and make this short, but every time I say that, I feel like I talk too long. But I'm actually hoping this will for real be kind of relatively quick. But yeah, first of all, I am trying to kind of like nudge my sister in the direction of seeing if I can get her to live stream and stuff. But I'm not trying to be too pushy with it. But she is kind of interested, which is why I do keep bringing it up to her. She's just like hasn't put the effort into it. But yeah, so we've talked about possibly live streaming together, possibly throwing around the idea of making our own separate channel together, as well as possibly getting her onto my channel. So I'm hoping that maybe I can get my twin on board with streaming with me. But yeah, um, so I do have. She took some videos of us talking, so I'm gonna play some of that a little bit before we get started. Just kind of like a little, I don't know, a little family time to show you, I guess. Introducing you to my twin, so to speak, virtually for those of you who haven't met her. So yeah, we'll do that first, and then after that, I think I'm going to spend most of this live stream going over two different Randazzo family timelines that I put together. One of them is just putting the events into context of the entire family business. I meant to say the family feud events, like the FEUD. The captioner did not put that right. But I meant to say in terms of like, legal action or disputes, So we'll look at like the history of the business as well as those disputes. And then we'll do just kind of like a general, give the recap some context there. And then we'll look at a general summary and recap of everything that we've kind of talked about in the Randazzo family history lately, you know. And then I'm going to finish up with we had looked at a forum, and that forum was kind of comparing Randazzo's to a New York City pizza business. And I looked a little bit into that pizza business, but not too much, and not enough to really provide sources. I just did a quick Google search, which you can do yourself. But apparently, Ray's Pizza in New York City, there's a bunch of different pizzerias that go by that name. And apparently there's been some contention about the ownership of it. Apparently some of them did try to franchise at one point. It didn't work out. But there's just like a lot of people with that name at this point. And at this point, so many people have been doing it for so long that like no legal action really kind of worked out against each other, I think. Or if it did, I didn't look into it enough to see that. But anyway, yeah, so people were like asking, is that the same thing, I think the difference is, I think that, yes, all of the raised pizza has the same name, but as far as I could tell, they were all from the same family versus the Randazzo situation, it all comes from this one family. And even though the Kaluta bakery situation with Diane, the ex-wife, even though she isn't technically a descendant of the original, Mr. Sam Randazzo there, but, she did marry into that family and then had a dispute related to the name from that association, And so it all does come from that one family, which I think would be the main difference. But I was thinking about, because I've worked in franchise sales, and so my mind just kind of went to the ideas of what could it be like, if they were to organize as a franchise, because I have worked for franchises as well. Like the first coffee shop I worked at was PJ's. So, at PJ's, they would share employees, they would share material. Like, the two PJ's that I worked at had two separate owners. But they would, like, if one of them needed a hand, we'd go over to the other and things of that nature. They really shared supplies and outsourced and everything. And so I was thinking of, like, that type of structure combined with the franchise unit sales experience I had with Jana King. And I was thinking of that, and I was just kind of considering, like, what would the Randazzo family need to organize, even if they weren't trying to be a franchise. Like, I'm basing it off of my experience in franchising, but even if, like, that's not what they want to do at all, about just being more of a common entity ownership-wise, in terms of each having their own independent ownership and functionality and being their own entity still, but still having also a separate form of common like sense of unity in how they share their business resources. I don't know if I'm using the right words. Read my mind. Maybe you know what the fuck what I mean. I don't know. But anyway, so I'm just gonna roll my intro and then we're gonna get right on into it. So yeah, thank you for joining me. Hi, my name is Alexis, also known as Lexi or Deaf Child. I was born deaf, hard of hearing. I began doing business as Deaf Child 2013, marketing 2011, sales 2009. I've earned 50 plus certifications in marketing and sales. My Bachelor of Science from Loyola University, New Orleans, with a music industry studies major and a business administration minor. Deafness runs in my family genetically. Speech is not fully accessible to me. Anyway, I'm here to bitch about whatever the fuck is on my mind. So here we go. Visit my site at noladeafchild.com. Oops, so it's muted. So first of all, I'm gonna play some. We're gonna check out my twin's Instagram, and I'm gonna play some videos that she posted there from some time we spent together last night, actually. And so, it's not captioned, but I think that the captions might show up with this auto caption. But I'll just repeat what was said. I think after if it missed anything, I think.
No one has to see each other. So, oh, look how big that was. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like,
so I'm hoping that this does not get flagged by copyright. But basically, I was saying that I think I was saying, you know, the big houses were kind of cool because people could live together, but then not have to see each other or some shit like that. I don't remember what the fuck I said. I was saying something like that, and then I was also saying, see, that's what the fuck I'm talking about. But yeah.
it's fine to climb Mount Everest if you're rich, but you can't want to die if you're poor. Like, then you're gonna go to a mental institution. But if you're rich, you can climb Mount Everest and kill yourself for like a few $100,000. No big deal.
So that's my twin I paused on right here, and I'm in the seat next to her. But yeah, so basically, I think I've said this on one of these live streams before. You know, you can, it's fine to want to kill yourself if you're poor, you know, but if you're rich, you can. You can't want to kill yourself if you're poor. They'll put you in a mental institution, you know. But if you're rich, you can climb Mount Everest, and it's fine. Yeah. All right. I feel like I've ruined it by trying to explain it. Whatever.
They just really don't look like they're suffering in this economy enough.
I just said they really don't look like they're suffering in this economy enough. I was kidding. But anyway, I think I'm funny. My sister, you see, my twin thinks I'm funny. Not everybody thinks I'm funny, but at least my twin thinks I'm funny. But anyway, so moving on, I did put together kind of a couple of timelines. One's more of a table than a timeline, but it's like a table timeline. I don't know. But so first of all, I have like a little timeline here. This is a recap of the entire altercation situation in the context of the family business structure. More details of this timeline were covered in the previous live streams, so I'm not going to get into it because we went through a lot of sources that went through the family king cake history in the previous live streams. But what we haven't gone through is the legal action dispute timeline in context of that. So I have one that has the legal action and dispute in context of the business that we're going to look at first here. And then next we're going to just recap just the legal action after that. So, in 1965, Mr. Samuel Randazzo opened Highland Bakery with his 3 sons, right? Well, in 1988, unfortunately, Mr. Samuel Randazzo passed away. And in 1992, Mr. Manny Randazzo Jr. opened what became Manny Randazzo King Cakes. In 1994, 3 of Lawrence Randazzo's kids opened Good Children Bakery. In 1994, there was a family physical fight. In 1995, Lawrence files and later drops a lawsuit on Manny Jr. for opening up his own bakery. Um, in 1997, Manny Randazzo Sr.'s daughter Trisha opened Camellia City Bakery, or I think it's Randazzo's Camellia City Bakery. I think I worded that wrong, but that version of their location, you know what I mean? Inside down with her husband, Mr. Louis Zorns. And I think she has her name like hyphenated, like Randazzo Zorns, if I'm not mistaken. And I think they both worked at Highland Bakery as well, if I'm not mistaken. And in 2005, Good Children closed after Katrina. In 2006, Nona Randazzo's bakery was opened by Joel Randazzo Forget and her husband Felix. Um, let's see, in 2013, a revocatory action related to escrow was filed in the Randazzo family. We'll get to who did that in a minute. In 2014, damages were filed on disputed inherited property. We'll get to that also. In 2016, Mr. Salvador J. Randazzo owes Capital One money. In 2017, Laureen Randazzo sought money for the family home that was torn down. In 2021, the Randazzo family acted against Mr. Salvador's wishes. And so, he basically tried to take legal action against them for that. Not tried to, did, but was it effective? Anyway, and then in 2024, Mr. Salvador was denied the amount of money he wanted from his inheritance, if I'm not mistaken. And in 2025, Mr. Salvador Randazzo was suspended from the bar. So that's the timeline of everything. And I previously have kind of speculated on the origin of some of these issues, but I'm going to try not to do that today. I'm going to just try and kind of recap if I can, but I know I like to talk too much. So let's move on. Now we're going to get into just a recap. So that was our timeline, of the business and the legal action and disputes in context of the business timeline. Now we're just going to get into the timeline and breaking it down into the date recorded when the dispute or legal action occurred or a final decision was filed, the nature of the dispute or legal action, the Randazzo family connected parties involved, and the sources I have on these altercations. So this is all just going to be disputes or legal action related to the Randazzo family that I find to be relevant. I'm going to give y'all a little summary. I might talk a little bit, more than what's on this table. Well, not might, I think I will. But I'm going to try not to go too long. But yeah, anyway, so first of all, do I need to zoom in a little more? Actually, I could. First of all, I'm going to zoom in a little more. Wait, is that too much? Hold on. I'm going to timestamp this shit. Well, am I back where I started? Oh, that's way too far back. Oh, no. 375. This is unfortunate for me. Well. Okay. Well, now I feel crazy. Aha. I apologize. Now I'm back. I think I'm back to the same fucking place. All of that for nothing. All right, we're just gonna leave it here. Okay. Now let's actually read this thing. So, in 1994, family members slapped each other and pushed each other during an argument, leading to misdemeanor charges and a lawsuit. 5 family members got into a name-calling spat, which was turned physical. I could not find any court records on this. The only record that's public that I could find on this was published by NOLA.com and written by Gabriella Killett. And it was published in a source in the article called "Why Are There So Many Randazzo King Cake Shops? Here's the Family History." And the Randazzo connected family and parties that involved that I know of was one of Lawrence's children, Lorene Randazzo was named for filing a civil suit against family members alleging severe and disabling injuries as well as severe emotional and mental distress. So it didn't name which family members were involved. But again, that's, yeah. So then we have 2 dates recorded online for the next event. One of them I saw for 1992 and the other one I saw for 1995. Because of the way it's worded in the article that quotes it as potential, that puts it on the timeline at 1992, I think maybe it could be at 1995. But anyway, so we have 2 dates recorded here. But the nature of the dispute was Lawrence filed a lawsuit alleging that Manny Jr.'s Metairie Bakery cost Lawrence's Chalmette shop almost $100,000 in king cake sales in 1993 and 1994. The suit is later dropped. And this was basically Mr. Lawrence Randazzo fighting Manny Randazzo Jr. And the source that put it at 1992 was the Tiger Droppings Forum, a commenter in there. And that Tiger Dropping Forum was called, Is Randazzo's the NOLA version of New York City's Raised Pizza? The source that puts it at 1995 is NOLA.com, that same article I just said. Why are there so many Randazzo king cake shops? Here's the family history. And it's published by NOLA.com by Gabriella Killett. And that's the one that says it happened in 1995, which is mentally where I'm just going to kind of place it. I don't know. That feels right. But yeah. So, next up, filed December 18th, 2013. We have a revocatory action case related to escrow. And here we have Salvador J. Randazzo versus Mr. Felix E. Forget Jr., Joel Randazzo Forget, Kendall J. Myers, and Patrina Randazzo Myers. And so this was in the case Salvador J. Randazzo versus Mrs. Kendall J. Myers. I'm not going to read the case number. Fuck that. Published by Judy Records. Alright, so then we have filed August 6, 2014. We have a case related to damages with the same property listed as a property disputed in the succession legal action. And for those who don't know, sorry if I'm redundant, but some people don't, that's related to inheritance. And so this was Joel Randazzo Forget and Patrina Randazzo Myers versus Lorene Randazzo and Salvador J. Randazzo. Okay. And this was filed in the case Joel Randazzo Forget versus Salvador J. Randazzo, published by Judy Records. Alright. And then filed July 20th, 2016. We have promissory note with case events through 2018. And this is related to Mr. Salvador J. Randazzo. And here, Capital One National Association filed a lawsuit on Salvador Randazzo. And this was also published, or they took legal action. Court records were also published by Judy Records related to this as well, if I interpreted that information correctly. Okay, then, in 2017, Lorene sues St. Bernard Parish for demolishing a family home impacted by Katrina, which they labeled as condemned. She claims because they used depositions from other cases for witness testimony, she was deprived of her right to cross-examine those witnesses. And this was related to Mrs. Lorene Randazzo, but if I remember correctly, I think Mr. Salvador may have represented her. And this was called Randazzo versus St. Bernard Parish Government, and it was published by Midpage. Okay, then here we have May 10th, 2021, a judgment was affirmed related to a December 21st, 2021 appeal. So the original judgment, I believe, was from May 10th, 2021. The appeal was December 21st, 2021, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if I wrote that right here, but whatever. Anyway, so the court ruled in favor of Patrina Ruiz and Braguglio and Randazzo Property Corporation. I don't know if I named that right, but basically, that fucking thing. You know what the fuck I'm talking about. To allow them to move forward with a deal with St. Bernard Parish, which Salvador Randazzo was trying to stop, citing past legal action with St. Bernard Parish and his parents as reason. And his parents' property, I believe. Probably should have put the word property up in there. whatever. If I'm not mistaken, if I interpreted documents correctly and all that. And so the people involved in this one was Salvador J. Randazzo individually and as executor of the succession of Lawrence J. Randazzo and succession of Josephine L. Randazzo and Lorene A. Randazzo versus Patrina Ruiz and Bergoglio, Alex Ruiz, Gerald J. Ruiz Jr., Christy Ruiz Orso, I gotta say that, the heirs of Camille Ruiz, Manuel J. Randazzo Sr., Lena Torres, and Randazzo Property Corporation. And this is from the case Randazzo versus Imbraguglio, and it was published by Justia as well as Fine Law Case Law. Alrighty, then we got a couple more here for you. On June 12, 2023, we have a judgment appeal from September 6, 2024. Okay, so appellant sought to overturn the 2023 judgment of the district court. The Court of Appeal ordered some expenses to be paid from succession assets to appellants for expenses, but sustained the 2023 decision on distribution, as well as denied other expenses claims from appellants. I think that should have been expense claims, not plural there, but whatever. Anyway, Salvador was originally listed as an executor of the estate, but appellees successfully petitioned court to remove Salvador as executor. Also, so in this case, those additional expenses, Mr. Salvador Randazzo was trying to ask them for over $500,000 related to expenses, and they were like, fuck no. And also, another issue that had come up, if I'm not mistaken, was Mr. Salvador Randazzo was also trying to claim that he had loaned his mother money. That he had loaned his mother money is what I was saying, but the captioner got that wrong. Anyway, yeah, but if that was the case, then why wasn't he able, and that would have been the same time frame within the Capital One situation, so how could it be, like, was that why he couldn't pay his Capital One loan back, or would that be evidence right here of perhaps he may not have had the funds to be loaning anybody money if he was not able to pay a loan himself? Could that explain some of the decisions that were being made at this time? I don't know. That's pure speculation. I just think the timeline of that relationship is quite interesting. But anyway, apologies. So the appellants in that case was Salvador J. Randazzo and Lorene A. Randazzo, and this was versus appellees Joel Randazzo Frege and Patrina Randazzo Myers. And so yeah, that was discussed, and the succession of Lawrence J. Randazzo consolidated with the succession of Josephine, I don't know if I'm saying this, or I'm saying this way wrong, Loya Cano or something like that, who was his widow. And this was published by Justia. And then last we have, on September 10th, 2025, Attorney Salvador was suspended from the Louisiana State Bar for 3 years, half deferred. And so this is Mr. Salvador Randazzo. And this was published by the Louisiana Attorney Disciplinary Board from the Supreme Court of Louisiana in regarding Salvador Randazzo. So, yeah. So that's our timeline here. When you look at, so this is the business, what was happening with our business deals with the time frame of legal action, you know what I'm saying? And then from there, we put that into context here with the legal dispute, and we put that into context with the physical altercations. So, in my opinion, they were also claiming that other people's success was preventing them somehow from making money, which I don't understand, but obviously that lawsuit was dropped. But it looks like, they weren't successful for whatever reason and blaming that success on other people for whatever reason. But there could be many factors related to why one person was more successful than another, and that could be related to something such as perhaps it could be their marketing, perhaps it could be the target market and the location that they are. Sometimes how successful a business is can be just, particularly like in the king cake business or in brick and mortar locations with food and beverage, it really can be a matter of location. In certain cases can be what, you know, allows certain businesses to go ahead and get more traffic, things of that nature. Like, there's just so many different factors, right? And so for me, where it looks like Mr. Lawrence, was filing a lawsuit on Manny Jr. If I'm not mistaken, Manny Jr. opened up his bakery in Metairie, if I'm not mistaken, right? And Lawrence Randazzo's bakery was in Chalmette. The target audience that's going to travel to Metairie between the New Orleans population size and the Metairie population size, in my opinion, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's much greater. The target market you're going to be able to market to in Metairie versus what you're going to achieve from Chalmette. Because even though Chalmette's not that far from New Orleans, for whatever reason, people like to go to Metairie because of like the mall and certain other places to go to. But there's just like less to do in Chalmette, in my opinion. And so people are less likely to go that direction. They're more likely to go to Metairie than they are to go to Chalmette, in my opinion. So part of why Mr. Lawrence Randazzo could have been blaming Manny for their success, in my opinion, could have been if Manny Randazzo Jr. was just able to do much better than him and he was jealous for those location reasons. But I also believe because of those location differences in the bakeries, I do not believe that those two target markets competed. To a point, yes, in Louisiana, people have their diehard favorites, so they will go out of their way to, go get a Don Juan cake or a Praline Haydale cake, for example. But on another level, like, people will also just gonna go get what the fuck cake is close sometimes. You know what I mean? I said fuck cake. Why the hell is that put in butt cake? Whatever. Anyway, so fucking like, so I don't think that location is, I think location is such a big factor that I don't think that their namesake would have been enough of an influence, you know what I mean, to prevent one from getting the other. I don't think that was cannibalization. And also, like, there's like, what, 2 or 3 Starbucks on Veterans alone, you know what I mean? A good franchise, you can have multiple in a close location and they're still going to perform well whenever you are doing your business accordingly. But yeah, so what I want to get into now though is my ideas on rambling about the unification of Randazzo's, and I don't actually foresee them going into any sort of franchising, but this is just more of like the idea of what would it take for them to get there or expand in that type of level based on where they are now, and is it possible? And the reason that I'm just kind of exploring this conceptually is because they do have this opportunity to create some frameworks to preserve a legacy for their future generations so that all of their kids have a family business to go get into, if that's what they so choose. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be real cool, in my opinion. But anyway, so my concept here is, could Randazzo's unify as a family franchise or some form of intertwined, even if separately owned, chain model where perhaps they function independently and are owned independently, but they still have a common sense of unification and shared business resources. So first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience and history with Inman Enterprises. They do business as Jana King, and they sell franchise units in the Gulf Coast region. And basically with them, my job was to sell franchise units. And I would basically be calling people and convincing them to come into our various locations around the Gulf Coast to come for a disclosure meeting and to then do the steps to follow up with them to close that sale so that they would buy units to own a franchise with Jana King and clean buildings for Jana King. And so I do have experience helping franchises grow. So Jana King is a franchise model where, because different franchises operate differently, but the way they do theirs is they have regional franchise units that you can purchase. So I worked for the Gulf Coast region, and they owned all of the territory in Louisiana, some territory in Texas, all of the territory in Mississippi, Alabama, or not all of Alabama, part of Alabama, all of Louisiana and Mississippi, and part of Florida. Apologies. Anyway, um, and then somebody else would own other regions. You can purchase a region, and then the regional franchisees wait, I get the difference between a franchisor and a franchisee confused. You know what? I'm not even gonna go there. But the regional bitch selling the fucking franchises then sells franchise units to individuals within their territory. Um, and so that's how we did that. And so we had different offices in different regions in that territory for that one regional unit, if that makes sense. Um, and so our sales, we were comparing our sales to the entire world. So our Gulf Coast region office office's sales were being compared to Hawaii, were being compared to New Zealand. You know what I'm saying? Like different offices. Um, so we would basically, in my opinion, the way that they were able to do this though is they have overarching. It's basically a fucking pyramid. I mean, I think all capitalism is a pyramid scheme. I actually think that in terms of what the franchise model is, if you're gonna do it, Jana King's a great one to do. So when I say the following, it's not about Jana King. It's more about the franchise concept in general, no matter what type of franchise you do. But basically, a franchise is a fucking pyramid scheme. You know what I mean? Like you got one person owning the rights to the name and likeness for all of this, one person or entity. You know what I'm saying? And then selling access to that and the recipes for everything it takes to be successful to different people. And so in order for that to happen, or in order for any type of unification to happen, I feel like Randazzo's could not grow to that because they don't have a common organized entity to lead everything. Right now there's too much infighting. They're trying to sue each other. Instead of, for example, helping each other grow, being like, oh, I see you're growing your business. I'm out of work. You're overworked. Can I get some hours there? Or do you need to outsource some of your baking into my bakery? You know what I mean? Like, there could have been business deals to be made. And I feel like they're missing out by not collaborating. So yeah. So now we're just going to get into steps needed for unification as an organization. So they would need mediation and arbitration agreement to prevent unnecessary legal action. They would need a clause that says any family member who loses a lawsuit against another family member related to business or in general shit loses a percentage of ownership from Randazzo Property Corporation or whatever it's called to the person that they lost against. I don't know if that's legal, but they should try it because you know what? That's gonna stop any unnecessary lawsuits. Fuck that. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I think I'm kidding, but that's like real. That's a real suggestion. Cause why are y'all trying to sue each other? Fuck that. And then a quarterly family only reunions on top of team building activities for all employees within their organization. Because the family needs to come together. Y'all are too divided. Y'all need to spend some time bonding and shit. Anyway, so for steps needed for a family owned chain, where it wasn't about franchising, it was just about working together. I think they need a successful business plan. They need to have some sort of agreement for how they're going to be handling any type of business interbusiness dealings. If they were to do that, they would need to have a family agreement on community ownership of base recipes. You know what? I think they need to do that no matter what. Which were created under Sam Randazzo at Highland versus what each person created themselves. So then you have community family procedures for referring business to each other's family and sharing resources such as ingredients and packaging. And marketing can be kept totally separate, or you can do a hybrid model of not only your own marketing but community marketing, because it's pretty simple to track the lead attribution, so each location only pays for their own leads. Um, and joint campaigns could be cheaper for you guys. It would reduce your cost of lead acquisition if y'all work together, in my opinion. Because, yeah, anyway, I would have to spend a whole other thing explaining that. But I'm squeaking up in my chair here. I don't know if y'all hear that. But anyway, so, because, like, it'll be, like, hitting, like, inside of my desk. Alright, so, if the family were ever going to franchise with this Randazzo's name, though, if that were ever up in the cards, some steps that would be needed for a family-owned franchising outside of the family would be all steps for family-owned chain unification would apply, but also I would set rules where people outside the family, they have to follow approved Randazzo recipes or have their specials submitted to Randazzo family for approval. Branding and franchising rules would also have to apply for everything, of course, and disclosure agreements would need to be done, and a disclosure process would need to be set up to follow, like, the FTC. And then internal brand operations and inside sales teams, that would need to be arranged. So yeah, you know what I mean? How much are we trying to outsource? How much are we trying to franchise out? And the reason being, though, the reason that, like, I think the Randazzo family could consider it is if they need an additional source of revenue. This could franchising. There's a good amount of money in it. There's a reason Janet King does it. They made a lot of money franchising. But yeah. And what that could do is also set up a system to where when you have family members who want to be involved in the family business but don't necessarily want to do the baking themselves, they can be involved in the franchising business sales side if that works for them. But anyway, and if that were going to happen also, though, research would be needed to determine the most efficient locations to scale, as well as the maximum that you could, locations that can be offered before you do cannibalize business or impede your profitability because of limited target markets in specific areas. But at the same time, if they ever, like, franchised on that level, I actually think they could do something to where, like, they have some sort of pop-up option on parade routes. I know that Randazzo's has seasonal pop-ups during Mardi Gras already. Like, I know a bunch of the different Randazzos have done that. But I feel like, I don't know if they have done this. I've never seen it. Having some sort of option on the parade routes for accessing Randazzo king cakes as well, I think could be a little. But yeah, or is that common? I just, like, miss it? I don't know. Most of the times that I attended Mardi Gras parades, most of those times I was doing one or two things. I was either in the parade itself, so I was too busy to pay attention to what it's like on the outside. But then when I attended parades, I typically would do what I would call party hop, you know? I would basically make a list of, like, because during every single parade, you know, enough people that are doing some form of event. So I would make lists of events or people's houses that were doing parties that I'm invited to or whatever. And I would make those lists of events and parties to go to and just kind of party hop or event hop, or, you know, along the route. I never really, like, stay on the route just, like, in one place, you know, usually. I've done it before, like, but with groups. I don't know. But it's not my go-to. But group, yeah, I don't know. Okay, but anyway, so, but I'm just saying, so if that ever has been a thing on the route, I was just too distracted to notice it. But, yeah. Which is interesting, because I feel like, you know, every time you go on a parade route, you kind of have, like, a whole different experience. But yeah, that was kind of it. Like I mentioned, I didn't plan too much for tonight's stream, but just to recap it all, basically, we just looked over 4 things. First of all, I showed you a little snippet of me and my sister chilling together, my twin and I, and she is throwing around the idea also with me, of joining me in live streams. We've also talked about the idea of starting our own channel together. So if that does happen, I will probably promote that on this channel. And then we went over 2 different timelines. One was putting legal action and disputes within the Randazzo family in the context of their business timeline for their family business history, and the other was looking more of the timeline of just a legal action and dispute and putting that into context of the events related to it and the people involved. And then after that, I've just been thinking a lot about like what could the family do to preserve a legacy, And so I kind of explored that concept through different avenues such as franchising or just not even franchising, but having more of family unification with the way they promote themselves, and work together during Mardi Gras for them to all be profitable. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. So yeah, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you. I will probably be on live fucking around sooner or later. So thanks for joining me tonight, and yeah, I hope everything works out. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Join the loyalty program at noladeafchild.com/loyalty and check in during live streams to get points for rewards.